Evening, well, good afternoon, everyone. We're delighted to have with us again our senior advisor, Andy Pilley, who's owner of Fleetwood Town, various other businesses, including interest in the Commonwealth, South Africa. Andy, great to have you on again. How have you been over the past few months since we last spoke with you? And how are things looking for the new season with Fleetwood?
Well, on a personal level, I've been fit and well. I'm double vaccine now, so I'm hoping I can stay that way. It's been very busy, and even though we're not firing on all cylinders, football wise or business wise, that does not mean that life is not hectic. And I think it's incredibly important that whilst we are still to a degree on pause, that we take full advantage of this period of time, and we do all we possibly can to plan for the future and to make sure that when life does resume as it used to, that we can maximise the potential.
How's the business been? Because I know obviously last time we spoke, it had obviously been affected quite heavily with what's gone on with COVID-19. I know businesses obviously since then have opened up considerably more. How's this last few months been for the businesses?
Well, the last few months, Sunil, have been better. Now, my core business is gas and electricity supply, and it's fair to say really that those businesses are a reflection of the state of the economy really and how active the economy is. So we've seen as of April the 12th that the vast majority of businesses have reopened, and that naturally has caused an increase in consumption. However, we are still affected by hospitality, and hospitality is a fraction of what it normally is. The current regulations make it very difficult really to operate at a normal level, and that means that we don't bill out as much as we used to, and there is still a significant financial impact occurring on my businesses.
It's interesting you mentioned hospitality, because I've seen one of the biggest issues hospitality is having is staff employment, in that they're really struggling to get people working, whether it be at pubs and bars and stuff. How's Fleetwood been in general as a town? Have you noticed any changes? Are we seeing pubs and stuff reopening?
Well, I can relate to that entirely. I think it's a really good point that you make there, Sunil. And what seems to have happened is people have been furloughed for a significant period of time. And these are individuals who normally work in the hospitality sector. Now, understandably, what many of these people have done is they have decided during the furlough period that they are going to go in a different direction. And maybe they have studied, or maybe they have made a different career choice. And we have certainly encountered a lack of hospitality staff. And I read that that's nationwide. And I think it's certain that will be a consequence of the lockdown and of the pandemic.
I think we've seen a lot of them are becoming nurses and generally working for the NHS. There's been a massive drive in people applying for NHS roles. And I think it's really affected the hospitality industry. I was actually in London the other day, and someone was saying at one of the pubs, he literally got someone to start on the day. They asked, they had their CV in their hand, and he just said, "You can start right now," because they're just a lot of the time. The bookings, when you're trying to book online, one of the issues they have is just they just don't have the staff, they have the capacity to put more people inside pubs and bars and restaurants. They just don't have staff. How's generally staff being for Fleetwood Town FC in terms of whether it be the physios, kitmen, and all that stuff? Has that been something that you've been able to kind of get them back in?
Well, football-wise, we still have not had any supporters for 15 months. So for the actual stadium, we've not had a single supporter inside the stadium. So we haven't needed any staff, bar one or two volunteers who've been looking after the directors. So stadium-wise, we haven't really needed anybody. However, we do have a sports complex which doubles up as the first team training ground, and that has proved to be enormously popular because we have vast outside spaces. And so when the new regulation came in that said hospitality can open as long as you are outside, we were somewhat blessed because we have canopies with electronic roofs whereby we can take the roofs off, and we've got an enormous beer garden. But we have struggled enormously to get staff, and that's despite not everywhere else being open. So I think this is a nationwide issue, a nationwide problem, and maybe the solution is going to be that hospitality staff are going to end up being paid more. I think there's probably another issue as well, and not everybody is aware of this, but I'm a big advocate of cashless transactions. And during COVID, it's almost seemed somewhat unacceptable to pass bits of paper around, which are notes. And so lots and lots of people are now transacting contactless. But what that means is, that means hospitality staff do not get tipped in the fashion that they used to when people were paying with cash. We seem to have lost the days of keep the change, love, or there's a couple of, there's £5 for yourself, because people don't carry cash about anymore. And so subsequently, the knock-on effects here that I believe is happening is it's almost a pay cut for hospitality staff. So not only have they had the chance to reconsider their choice of employment and their choice of career, they are also being hit with those tips, which are, I mean, in America, people live off the tips. The wages are very low, but I don't think they're getting the tips as they used to. And I read with great interest, there was a motion put forward by a Tory MP yesterday. And this was about, I'm not sure, you may well know better than me, but this was to do with the tips and how tips are distributed. And perhaps it's something that cashless payments should have a better facility to ensure that tips are available and that they should be distributed to the staff and not to the establishment.
It's incredible, really. Obviously so much has changed with the pandemic ways of working, but like you mentioned, there's these hidden impacts that you might not initially think are there, but are actually becoming quite apparent. I'd be interested to know from a kind of football personnel perspective, with obviously a lot of clubs after the pandemic, maybe with a bit less money in the transfer budget to spend. Is there more competition now for out of contract players, free agents? Have you noticed, or is that something that's always at this time of year difficult to?
Well, what I would say, Paul, is that we have to, you always have to have a plan. And every pre-season, I will sit down with my chief executive and with my manager, and we'll put together an objective and a strategy for the forthcoming season. Now, on the back of the pandemic, and we cannot be absolutely certain. I'm the eternal optimist, but I don't know 100% that there isn't going to be another lockdown in the winter. So many times we've seen these false dawns whereby it's felt like, well, we're going to save Christmas or we'll be all right for Easter. And we find ourselves now, it's July the 19th. So we have to be somewhat prudent. Our strategy is that we are going to run with a reduced wage bill, with the onus being on value for money. But also what we want to do is we want to give a chance to younger players. We want to play younger players. There is a consequence of Brexit, which means that the Premier League clubs cannot now go to Europe and sign EU nationality players easily without them being established internationals. So what this does is this drives up the value of young English players. And so if you have an academy, and we have a very good academy, and this is an opportunity to trade the commodity that you deal in well. The commodity that we deal in the football club is football players. And the reality is that they signed for Fleetwood, sadly not because they want to play for Fleetwood for the rest of their career, but they want to use it as a stepping stone. They want to be the next Jamie Vardy, who goes from Fleetwood to Leicester and wins the league and wins the Golden Boot. They want to be that player who can use us as that stage to perform on, to that pedestal, to show everybody how good they are. And I'm delighted to say we've concluded one sale today to the Premier League, and we've got another 2 pending, which may well happen. Now, that's good for us, because my job as the football club owner is my responsibility to the town and to the local community is I have to make this football club sustainable. And it's all very well and good being ambitious and investing large amounts of money to climb the leagues, but I also have got a social responsibility, a community responsibility, whereby I cannot ever put the existence of the football club at risk. So I have to have a business plan. I'm not going to get the gates through the turnstiles at Fleetwood because we've got a small population. So we need a different model. And again, we have this state-of-the-art training ground, 13 pitches, 33 acres. It's probably Premier League standard. And we have to get younger players in. We've got to play them. We've got to sell them. And I've given a lot of thought to this during the pandemic. And you've got to know what you are. You've got to know what your identity is as a business. It's my belief. And our identity needs to be that, of course, we want sporting success. We want to win every game. There's no better feeling than when you're out on a Saturday night with your chest puffed out, with 3 points in the back. But equally, you've got to play some of those younger players, and you've got to be brave in my position. So that's very much the game plan.
Are you excited going forward with Simon Grayson now as manager? I always have this thing with, I think being a Chelsea fan, we've had a fair share of managers. And I always think that the job role of when a manager comes through midway through a season is almost a completely different role from when they start the new season. I think in some ways it's an easier job coming in halfway through the season where your job is, these are your squad of 20, get the best out of them. And then at the end of the season, you start this new cycle, which is, you need to build a team to get us to a championship over the next couple of seasons or whatever. Are you looking forward to working with Simon Grayson in the coming season?
Absolutely, yeah. He's been a pleasure to work with so far. He's hugely experienced. He's very calm. He's got a great track record. He's won promotion 4 times from League One, which is excellent. But just going back on the point you make, Sunil, I do agree with you, and I would always endorse the point that you make. However, what I would say is you went on and won the Champions League when you changed your manager. So it wasn't that bad for Chelsea. And I would also like to say a shout out to, I think you've got an incredible coach in Anthony Barry. He used to be my captain at Fleetwood. He is a really intelligent, exciting young coach, young English coach, and I think he can go right to the top.
I know Anthony Barry I think he does a lot of our set pieces stuff. I think Lampard was one I think initially brought him in. And that's kind of my point on the us Tuchel. I think Roberto Di Matteo, when he came in, and sometimes it's, your job of getting I think their job profile is almost, this is 6 months, do what you can. I think in some ways that can be a bit easier than I think Thomas Tuchel's now job, which will be to build a team that's going to play over 38 games to compete for a title. I think that job is in some ways a lot harder than the one he actually started with. Is that similar for Simon Grayson? Is it now? Because he had that 6-month period where you kind of, this is what these are your players. Now he's actually got to build something. Is that a different sort of conversation you'd have with Simon Grayson, let's just say now, compared to when he took the job?
Yeah, I think it is different. And I think Simon, as with most managers, when he got the opportunity was when we had downward momentum. The club was not winning games. We were losing too many games. And it's difficult going into a situation whereby confidence is not really sky high. There is always the opportunity that this is a blank sheet of paper. So anyone who is perhaps out of favour, they feel somewhat galvanised and they think, well, all of a sudden, I do have a chance now. I was written off by the previous manager, but now there's a new guy and everyone's got their opportunity. I think that's why you often see the bounce that is much talked about in football, whereby that all of a sudden you get a reaction and maybe some shock results because the players are playing out of their skin to impress the new manager. But now it is a chance for, just like Thomas Tuchel, for Simon Grayson to create his own team that plays his own style of football, his own identity. It's up to him to use his contacts to put together the best players he possibly can for the budget that he has. And also, I will be leaning on him as the owner and as the chairman to say, of course, we want to win every game, but we also want some assets. We want some players who we think are young enough and good enough that their best years are ahead. And if it's a stock or a share, we want some that are going to go on the incline. We don't want a lot of players or too many players that are getting to the end of their career, because if they are getting to the end of their career, we have no asset value at all and we will struggle to sell. So a blend is what I would say is required.
I'd be interested to know, since you become a football club owner, we see it talked about a lot in the press, how much technology is now playing in kind of the modern game, looking at stats, players, there's all talk of sort of the Brentford model. Is that something even in League One that you're looking at, like ways you can find an edge through technology, things like that?
Paul, it's massive. It really, really is. It's huge. And as much as I think gone are the days whereby there's just the we can all picture what a traditional football scout is like, an old guy with a flat cap on who's sat watching the reserves and with a notepad. Those guys, of course, still exist. But equally, what is now at the forefront of the modern game is stats, it's software, it's analytics. And does it work? Well, Brentford are in the Premier League, so clearly it does work. It has to work, or they would not have got to the Premier League. We subscribe to software. We subscribe to various pieces of scouting. Well, it's videos really, whereby there's players from all around the world that we can watch their clips and we can put in what are they like on a set piece, what they're like in a defensive position, how many miles do they run a game, how many times do they is their pass connectivity, how many times do they lose the ball. Football is so much more now than the old days of, come on lads, let's get into them and give it everything we've got. Sports science is everywhere, and in a lot of ways what this actually does is it actually takes away the opinion and the subjectivity, because sometimes we will have conversations with players and we'll say, you trained absolutely rubbish today. And they'll say, no, we didn't. I was really good. I worked really hard. Now, because they wear the GPRS vest, there is no hiding place. And we can say, well, the laptop says something different. The laptop says you only ran 6 miles and everybody else did 11. Right. So this is not just the naked eye, and it's a way of ensuring that your players train hard. But also, I do think that you have to use it for your scouting, for your recruitment. It's absolutely key. It really is. You can look at all of the stats, but I do also think that there is a time whereby you have to, the chemistry's got to be right for that player. You've got to think, are they going to settle in the area whereby you're based? Is their family going to be happy? Is the chemistry going to be right between that player and the manager and that player and the rest of the squad? If it's a very loud and lively dressing room and a player is very shy, are they going to fit into that, or vice versa? So there's lots of aspects, but I do think you have to embrace technology in football, just like you do in any modern business.
Has signing players, that's probably a silly question, has that changed during your process as a football owner? I come from the sort of, maybe the sort of Chelsea model, which I like the idea that the owner and the chief executive have more power than necessarily the manager. I'm sure Simon Grace probably won't like me saying that, but I like the concept that because your interests are long term and you're thinking of the future of the club. I'm the manager and I want to win tomorrow. I'm not necessarily thinking as long term. Have those conversations changed with the managers necessarily almost having less power, or is it pretty much similar?
Well, the way my football club works is I will never throw the keys to a manager and say, right, get on with it and just do what you want. You've got X amount of £1 million to spend on players. I think that's dangerous. And I'm not questioning the integrity of my current manager or any of the recent ones. But I do know in football what does happen is there will be a lot of recruitment that goes via the same agency that represents the manager on a lot of occasions. Now, that isn't healthy. There's a counter argument whereby you could say that Well, you wouldn't be able to sign those players if that agency wasn't on side with your manager. But my belief is you should always be looking for the long-term future of the football club. You don't want that. Well, I never want a situation, particularly with backroom staff as well, whereby that a manager comes in, clears out all the backroom staff, brings his team in. The next thing he's got another job and he leaves, and I'm left with just the kit man. Right? That's no good. You have to have the continuity, you have to have the stability, and all of those people. Only recently we had an incident, only last week, whereby a really highly rated, young, intelligent coach was propositioned from a bigger club. And we said, look, if you go, we'll shake your hand, we'll wish you the very best. Of course we will. But equally, think about it this way. This club has recently been taken over by some international investors. They've got a new manager in place. If things don't go according to plan in the first 3 months, the manager may go, and you may well find yourself out of a job. You've not got a job here. You've got a career. You've been with us for a long time. You're on a progression plan, right? There is a roadmap here for you to get right through to being a coach, an assistant manager, and a manager. And so I'm not telling you it's the wrong thing to do. I'm just telling you you should think very carefully about this, because in life, it's my belief that it's not all about just getting the most money as quick as you can. It's about stability, and it's about opportunity. Long-term opportunity is what you really do need to consider. And thankfully, this individual did, and he has now turned this approach down, and he's staying with us.
Yeah, I think like we've seen it time and time again. Clubs put everything into that, chasing that one promotion, that 1 year, and when it doesn't pay off, you see what happens down the line. It's a massive gamble. So it's definitely about that long-term development. I think something you spoke about with Sunil last time was the EFL and general state of the game in below the Premiership. I'd be interested to know, how those conversations been ongoing with the EFL. We've seen well publicised also the situation with Wickham and Derby, and not sure what you think about that as well.
Well, I mean, first of all, my views on the EFL. I think the EFL is a superb competition. I do rate the people who run the EFL. I think they've got real integrity and the best interest of the competition at heart. However, the problem that football has is a problem which really I can only describe it as being football is riddled with self-interest. And we currently have a situation whereby something like 82% of the Premier League money is distributed to the Championship. And then we have something like 10% goes to League One and 8% goes to League Two. Now, in order to make a change to that distribution, that financial distribution, which is my belief is necessary, because we're ending up now with this huge gulf between League One and the Championship. And very often the teams that go up from League One will find themselves coming straight back down again, because a wage bill of £3 or £4 million cannot compete with a wage bill of 40 or 50 million pounds. And it's down to the lack of equality in the distribution of funds. So I think the money should be smeared more evenly. Of course, I recognise that the Championship should get more. That's the senior competition. But I think 82 to 10 and 8 is extreme. But in order for this motion to be passed, we would need the Championship clubs to support it. And quite frankly, that's not going to happen. This is very much turkeys waiting for Christmas. It's never going to be passed by the Championship. And it's the same throughout football. I can speak from personal experience. When I was in the non-league, I was campaigning for 3 or 4 teams to go up from the non-league to the Football League. And of course, when you get in the Football League, your politics change. You're just saying, nail the trapdoor shut. We don't need relegation. But it is, everybody will always vote for what is best for them. And I think this is why there needs to be some independent regulator who looks after the best interest of the game. And subsequently, if you look after the best interest of the game and of the competition, then what that means is you, in turn, look after the best interest of the supporters. and the good people of the towns and the communities throughout the country that all have this flagship, this hub of the local community, which is the football club, which touches so many people of all age ranges, from the youngest to the oldest in the community, families and generations of communities. And unless we make football sustainable, that should be the main objective to me, really. I think people will always, I think it's part of our society. People will go to football matches and enjoy a day out, but we need to ensure that those clubs are sustainable and that they are not going to the wall. And it frustrates me really, because I think there's some quite easy wins that could be made. I mean, parachute payments. What is that about? I mean, we've had this year, we've had promoted were Norwich, Watford, and Brentford. Now, Norwich and Watford were on for parachute payments. So subsequently, that means there's circa £88 million of money that is no longer needed to go from the Premier League to Norwich and to Watford. So that £88 million has already been budgeted for. So how about they do us all a favour and just spread it evenly across the clubs who need it, not because they've been mismanaged or that the owners haven't been reckless in any way. We've had a pandemic situation, and what we've received has been next to nothing. And all we've got is enormous debts, which are going to take years to unwind. But there's things like that whereby the money is put to one side. There's no point that staying in the Premier League and being smeared across the Premier League. It's a case of almost doing the decent thing, in my opinion. But there is nobody championing these causes, because if you put it out to a vote, the Premier League has more voting rights than the Championship. The Championship has far more voting rights than the lower leagues. And therefore, nothing will be done about it. And we will miss an opportunity of what is cash, which has already been put to one side, which is already in the budget, which could help everybody out and help us out the hole that we all find ourselves in.
Why would Championship teams vote against the changing of distribution? The reason I ask that is I can understand the Premier League. You look at the top six, realistically, that top six probably never going to finish outside the top 10. So, it's quite a stable kind of. I know West Ham and Leicester have broken, but generally, you're not going to see Man United get relegated next year. But you look at Derby, for example, who was it 2 years ago almost got a one step away from promotion, and last year they were one step away from relegation. So why would they vote against the redistribution of wealth in sense of giving more money to League One? Because it's so much more. They could easily be in League One next season. I don't know who exactly finished sixth this year in the Championship, but they could easily be in League One next year.
Totally agree with you, Sunil. I really, really do. And I asked the very same question of the Premier League clubs, because of the Premier League clubs, I look at that list of teams in the Premier League, and many of those have been in the EFL for a long, long time. They really have. And teams should be careful, really, what they wish for, because it's highly likely that they will find themselves in the EFL again. And it would be, in my opinion, far better for the long-term best interests of that football club and football in general, because let's face it, football without opponents is somewhat pointless. And so it's in everybody's best interest that there is a solid competition with good standards, we're generating good players, and we have good facilities as well. And so it frustrates me that I think people are short-sighted, and I think that they focus on the here and now without really giving thought to the bit unpopular reality, which is that at some point they're probably going to be relegated, because football's a massive ups and downs. And that's one of the great glories of the game, is that you can, with the pyramid, you can go up and you can go down, and that's what makes it exciting. So I think people should recognise that, they should realise that. But equally, I just wish we had somebody who could get it by the scruff of the neck and could say, look, this is what's going to happen because it's in the best interest of the game. And I don't think it would matter enormously to a team that's getting parachute payments, if they ended up with £44 million instead of £50 million, I think they'd still get by. I really do. And that money could just be smeared across the teams that do really need it, and just make it more of an even playing field.
I think my next question is, it the ownership of these clubs? The reason I asked that is I remember going to I had an amazing exchange with a Sunderland fan actually a few years ago. I went to Chelsea Newcastle where we lost, but I remember bumping into a Sunderland fan who was talking about how it is being a fan of that club, and he was saying how, when I watch Chelsea play, when we lose, I go to generally quite a nice bar or pub afterwards. I have access to so many restaurants in London, and I can still, I'll be drowning my sorrows, but in a fairly nice and fairly great city. Whereas being a Sunderland fan, your club is everything. Going to a game at Stadium of Light and living near the stadium, that is your weekend. That it doesn't have that access, and you could see almost the difference. Do football owners get that? And also, I know obviously you do, being Fleetwood and being British and that being your town. Do other owners get that same understanding from fans?
I think it varies. I think it depends. There are football club owners that I'll sit in the director's box opposite, and if they score, they don't celebrate. It just feels like it's almost a business which is about the balance sheet and the P&L. But there are some equally, to be fair, that kick every ball and will be quite emotive. I'm probably part of the second category because I grew up on the terraces, and football's always been a huge part of my life. But I do think that it's good if you have someone who is really it's part of their DNA, and it's part of their just what they are as an individual. And particularly if you are lucky enough to end up as the custodian of the football club for your local area, then I think even more so. I always think it's not just the pleasure it brings to me. I love to see the pleasure it brings to the local community and so many people. It changes their lives for the better if you have a good result and a good performance on a Saturday, on a Tuesday, and I think that's huge.
Going back to independent regulator, I know it's something that's been really discussed quite a lot. We discussed it before. I think following the ESL, we saw Sky Sports talk about it in a lot of detail. I think Gary now will do a lot of sort of passionate speeches on independent regulation. Where do you see that coming from? Do you see that coming from government, the Football Association, the EFL, Premier League? I'm guessing it's probably a combination, but where do you think realistically the kind of that step towards that direction, where do you think it will come from?
Well, my view is I think it needs government intervention. I think we do need the government to get involved and to say, look, we need to get a grip of the nation's most popular sport, and we need to ensure that not just in the decisions aren't just made in the best interests of billionaires who own Premier League clubs. The decisions that are made in the best interests of the people of the country, because it's a huge part of every society and community throughout the country. So I think we do need government guidance there. We all know about the English Super League, that it was a pretty abhorrent self-interest attempt to grab more money, and £200 to £300 million with no relegation. That to me takes away the magic and the glory of football. I think it's superb. I saw the Chelsea fans saying that they missed their cold nights in Stoke, and it's not all about playing Real Madrid. It's about, that is real football. As a kid, I grew up and I had a Panini sticker album, and I remember collecting all the teams. I had Subbuteo teams, and I had Brentford, I had Leyton Orient, as well as Arsenal and Tottenham and Chelsea. And it's all these clubs are as much a part of football, in my opinion, as those top six clubs are. And I don't subscribe to the view that the other Premier League clubs are the white knights of football, and they were so badly aggrieved, so badly treated by this power grab by the Elite Six, because many of those other clubs, only the previous season, were trying to get null and void over the line. So there wouldn't have been any promotion. They think we have short memories. They were, again, acting in self-interest rather than the best interest of the competition. And unfortunately, it's riddled with self-interest. The game is riddled with self-interest. And it always will be unless somebody at governmental level gets involved and says, right, we are now going to have a panel that is going to have within its committee people that are perhaps elected because that it's believed by various parties that they have the best interest of the game at heart. I did have a Zoom with Helen Grant a few months ago, and I was very impressed. It felt like she was somebody who was hugely passionate about this, and it wasn't just a campaign to win votes. She gets it, and I felt that was great. I speak to Gary Neville fairly regularly. He is also of the same opinion, but nothing's going to change unless something happens. And it's frustrating, really, because we've had the perfect opportunity for something to change during furlough and while our life has been on pause. To me, when you're on pause and when things are not happening in the normal manner, then that's a great chance to sit down and make some changes. Now, I'm hoping we haven't missed that opportunity. I'm hoping that somebody somewhere is still going to push forwards with this, because my concern is, just like Project Big Change, which I actually thought there was a lot of positives in Project Big Change, because I'm not saying it was perfect, because there was flaws, but it struck me as the opening gambit in a negotiation. And there was a recognition that there needed to be a redistribution of funds. And that came from Manchester United and Liverpool. And to me, what should have happened is, in business, you always have to evolve, you have to change. And there are times whereby you need to get the key people around the boardroom table and say, right, guys, what are we going to do in the best interest of football? People have to realise that just because the Charity Shield, for example, say it was very popular in the 1970s and 80s, it isn't quite so popular in 2021, nor is the League Cup. And so what can we do? How can we mix these things up to make them exciting? How can we keep people's interest and excitement going as much as it could be? Why not invite the Scottish Premier League into the League Cup? Why not? Just because we never had before doesn't mean we can't. These things are the art of the possible. And there should be some brainstorming, getting the key people around the table and having those what-if conversations. And there might be some crazy off-the-wall ideas that come out in it, but there might also be some really good ideas that would excite supporters, excite sponsors, TV channels, and get some more money back into the game, which can be redistributed to the areas that need it, grassroots, non-league, lower league, and make this fantastic game sustainable.
I think, yeah, talking the ESL, I think the final or the goodwill payment they made, I think, was pretty quite pathetic. The money, the peanuts for the clubs. I think that was, I want to see my club do a lot more in terms of, I'm sure what I really liked about that ESL thing was, I'll be honest, some of those clubs are my rival clubs, and I didn't expect their fans to be as angry, but it was almost a universal anger between, I think, just generally English fans, which was really good to see. I think you talked about there being opportunities with COVID. I thought ESL would be a fantastic time. Also, something that has suffered such a backlash, for there to be a conversation about independent regulators, because you're just seeing, I think, clubs almost going too far. What do you think? What does the future look like? Are you optimistic about this kind of change in football? Because we have had some changes. I mean, the fit and proper director test we saw, I know it wasn't great. It didn't seem to do a fantastic job. We've seen the financial fair play, which I've never been the biggest fan of, because I think it sometimes actually stifles smaller clubs. I think it just sometimes it's hard for small clubs to make that jump. And I've made this argument a lot that I think if it wasn't for FFP, I think Wolves and Everton would be doing a lot better with their owners. And I think it's fine for me now as a Chelsea fan. We're one of the big teams, but had FFP been involved in 2004, we wouldn't have 2 Champions Leagues to our name. I can almost guarantee that. So I'm not always the biggest fan of that. Are you optimistic for change? And I actually do want to ask your opinion on financial fair play. Is that an issue being in the League One when you're trying to grow a club, and naturally at times costs can be a bit higher than your revenue? Has that been a bit of an issue?
I think there has to be some form of regulation. I think there should be something, because again, if there's not, what I have seen over the past 17 years whilst I've been a club owner is I've seen people come in, and no doubt well-intentioned, but they've run their football clubs in almost a casino style, whereby that they'll go all or nothing on promotion. And then if they don't get promoted, well, I'm leaving now, that's it. And you've got players on telephone numbers, enormous money. And the very survival of the football club is then on the line. So I think there should be some financial regulation whereby, but it's where that line is drawn, because equally, I'm a big fan of, I want to be able to develop players, and I want to be able to sell them to the Premier League and to the Championship. So if we reduce the amount of money they can spend, then that reduces investment in the lower leagues. So again, we have to be careful as to how we create these rules, because we don't want to stifle the football economy. We want to make it attractive to actually invest and to create young players as well, because that can only be good in turn for the national team. I think when it comes to the future of English football at all levels, I think what was really quite disappointing was the way the ESL was done. It was almost done in secrecy. And I think that you can't just come out with a news flash. Oh yeah, we're all leaving. And it was at the half time and wanting some game on. So you think, what the hell is going on here? How can this be? At least say, look, we want to play Barcelona, Real Madrid. We want to put together this amazing spectacle whereby the TV rights will be astounding, but it shouldn't be a closed shop, in my opinion. I think that's where it's wrong. I think that, again, you have to have relegation, and you've got to give hope to some of the other teams that they can find their way into it if they perform exceptionally well on the football pitch in the English League. I'm all for change, but change whereby it's in the best interest of the competition, not just the best interests of various owners who are looking at the way that they measure success is the bank balance, really, or the value of the football clubs, as opposed to the way that a supporter or supporters throughout the country would measure what is good progress. And I do think that if there is a body that could be that people could engage with and could put forward proposals, I think that body could be influential in change. But right now we don't have that body, and we just have this voting rule whereby that people will always vote for self-interest, and we cannot get any change through for that reason.
Oh, I think it's going to be an interesting time ahead. I'm sure that sort of ESL backlash, I think that there's more to come. I think we're seeing Juventus and Real Madrid still talking about it, and I hope it just continues to open more conversations, and hopefully we can see, as we're sort of wrapping things up, Fleetwood have a good season this year. I'm going to put you on the spot just as we finish. Where are we seeing Fleetwood finish this season in League One?
Well, just before we do, one thing that's very important for everybody who's watching this is we have a Fly on the Wall documentary, which is going to be released on July the 31st. There's 6 episodes, and it will give you an opportunity to really see what it's like in the dressing room, in the boardroom, in the town of Fleetwood. And I think it's a fascinating watch. It's going to be on the channel DAZN, which I'm sure you've heard of. It's almost a Netflix of sport. And I would urge you to watch that. It's very, very good, I do believe. And I think Fleetwood will finish this season in the top half of the table, pushing for the playoffs. I'm hoping we can sneak in there. And if you can sneak into the playoffs, then anything's possible.
For the Fleetwood documentary, so DAZN, we'll be sending the link in our newsletter so everyone can have access to it and see how it is to sign up. I've seen the trailer for it. It looks really exciting. I'm particularly excited about probably seeing a certain ex-manager of Fleetwood's on screen. But no, I think it'll be great to actually see how a League One club is run and the actual ins and outs, as opposed to, I think that we've seen quite a few Premier League ones, the Man City, Tottenham one. I think seeing actual grassroots football on a more sort of conventional level will be really, really interesting. So we'll definitely be sending out emails for that. So, well, thank you for your time today, Andy. It's been a pleasure as always to have you on. Hopefully, I think I said this last time, and we said we'd try to do this in person. It hasn't quite happened yet, but hopefully the next one will be in person. But yeah, thank you for your time today.
Thanks, I certainly Andy. Hope so. Now, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Sunil. The pleasure's been all mine. Good luck to you. I really enjoy the episodes, and thank you for the invite.
Thank you, everyone. This will be released shortly on our Spotify, YouTube channels, and we'll see you all hopefully next week with Sir Charles Walker.